We're on.
I will call the Community Business Relations Committee to order. All members are present. And we have one item to discuss this evening, and we have 15 minutes to discuss the process to review a special event policy. And forgive me, I'm still logging in here. Rebecca, did you want to?
Sure. Well, I had an opportunity to speak with President Rozek, and she communicated that this was a community business relations before. And then when Sarah was doing the update with the history report, so we'll go back and try to tag back to where it was before. And we can find that it was at JP&L, so we provided the minutes of what transpired after that JP&L meeting. And then we can't find any other activity from the business relations. But we also kind of have an appreciation where this is also from 2016. So before we get started on anything, we just wanted to get some direction on how we're going to move through the process, primarily because with the special event policy, we have multiple groups who we issue special events to. So for us, we'll be putting together a communication plan so that everyone can understand the process that we're going to use and how we're going to review it. So that if there are people who want to attend any standing committee meeting or a board meeting, that they'll know or have some estimate of like how to engage with that. So it made me step back and I thought, okay, let's talk about that. Sarah is not your staff liaison for this committee, that would be Bart. Sarah is the one who is responsible for the execution of special event permits. And so we just need to acknowledge that if it's coming to your group and she's working on it, but we won't be able to schedule that at the same time. Which is just a logistical detail, but you just need to understand that if for some reason we get into an issue with scheduling.
Thank you. So when we were in agenda setting, whenever it can go to two different committees and it makes sense, and I think the policy with those we haven't adopted, the board direction was to just talk with the two chairs and come to the consensus. My recommendation was, we don't need to be discussing this today. The recommendation was to go just here and start talking about special event policy. And that will still be my recommendation. I think that because it's I told Rebecca, the people that objected the most when we heard it at the last time, I don't know why there's no record of this, but was the bid and the businesses. We had camp, we had Three Lions, we had, I don't know if it was Drafting Vessel back then, but that were worried because the policy at that time said two events, two street closings. And so it's JP&L to me, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but is like the HR manual is like internal policies, and if we start sending everything to JP&L because it's a policy, then we'll have, it's what we do, it's policy. So really, this one really affects the business community, I believe, and also the residents because it's a special event. So I just think we should just schedule it. So I don't know if there's something legal because it's a street
permit, I think. Don't permits go to?
Yeah, so it wasn't, JP&L wasn't, just so everyone's like clear. We weren't suggesting that it go to JP&L because it was a policy, but more so because in the drafting of how we originally, they just came back and talked about working with standing committees, that one way to identify which standing committee maybe assigned is to have the focus area be in concert with whoever the staff liaison is, just for purposes of attendance. So it was a permit that Sarah had issued. That doesn't necessarily need to be that way. I just, more importantly, before we get started, because everyone has an interest in this policy, I just want to make sure that we're starting out in the right foot.
I think it's community. I know Ann and I work for that. I don't trust you or President Rozek, but and it really is beyond just the permit. There's a lot of other issues with the business and neighbors. And I don't know how, do we have I have a whole 2016, we had like drafts and we were marking them up and we were pretty far along in it. It's like,
We sure were.
So I
Was
don't,
it CB community benefits?
yeah, so
Yeah, and Sarah
Community business. We were on it.
Yeah, please know that we're not saying that we don't believe you. I just say, as two people who are new, we genuinely just tried to go back to
I
try to find
spent
what was
a
there.
couple hours looking, like, and I did it again because I was scared that I had missed something and I just did not find them. I do find the
You found
policy
the
that was not
November
adopted.
6th, Right.
Yeah, and it just said
Three
policy not
lines,
adopted.
comments,
Yeah.
or comments.
I think,
I have them, my cousin, you ever can't find anything, call us.
Yeah.
so what kind of action do you need?
Well, so,
Today.
I mean, if there was a compelling reason to have it not here, which I understand that going forward, I hear what you guys are saying regarding this being a community and business relations kind of issue, but if Sarah is going to be, are you normally going to be in this committee?
So I'm usually JP&L.
Okay.
Bart's sick today.
Yeah, so Bart 6 is usually
Right.
taking. But the idea is the permit came to my office, so I was the one who started looking into going forward with the policy and procedures.
So who does the parklets and that stuff? That's Bart.
That's Bart.
This is really similar, it's an extension of those types of activities.
It's the street closing.
Yeah.
No?
Well,
then I
makes
guess-
sense to do the work on it, like sort of go back to where we left off
Right.
and see what the,
And we were the three members that were on the board, and
So do you have wherever we left off the community business relations, because we can't find it.
what else do you?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
November 16th.
I have a drafted policy and I'm happy to send it to you guys to see if there were additions, but I don't have markups or
have red
comments or,
lines?
there is none of that. It just says policy, whatever, not adopted. And that's all the information I have.
Hopefully after doing something works.
I think the one thing that I was, like, from a department head standpoint is we were really trying to separate policy from what our procedures are internally to make sure we're bringing the most complete package to you guys, especially when there's a new event. And with a lot of new department heads, just making sure we know what our roles are in bringing those up to you guys.
I mean, the biggest, I said to Rebecca, the biggest thing that we're gonna need to discuss when we started this discussion, there's just one thing that was really outstanding is, how many times are we gonna close down the street? I think that's where we got tripped up, and I just think that's when it ended.
I mean, that's-
Like, that was the
yeah.
controversy,
Yeah.
and so we hadn't gone any further to make that discussion happen.
So before we begin, so I'm hearing that we're gonna stay here. We recognize that Sarah may have an issue attending for sometimes, you know, when it is being discussed, and that's acknowledged. But the second, I guess, concept that's important to me as starting this process with you is that I do feel it's important that we have a communication plan so that everyone's aware of when we'll be discussing it. Because we've had a number of people who have inquired to us already, and so I want to make sure that we give them, you know, that this group has given some thought in terms of how we're going to communicate.
So there's I don't know if we need a whole big plan, and because there's a spot on our memo that talks about, it has the community notified. It's really the bid and the businesses. Is there?
well, that's kind of where, what the halt was last time, is that
We
we went
just never
so
reached
far
out.
and never reached out and got
Right.
feedback. And then we didn't really have time to kind of agenda it, I don't know what else, you know, it just
Yeah,
was
it was
like,
like-
other things took its place. So I think in my mind, the process-wise, it would be, going back to that part and saying, you know, regardless of whatever draft we start with, just know that we need to pull in the bid in the business district and neighbors too, you know, for instance, just to get, I do think a communication plan is a good idea, because I think what we missed the boat on the first time was getting input to see what the concerns were, to see if there's just a logical way to work it out. And maybe there won't be, but we never took that step to find out.
But my question is, I don't want to waste a lot of time on a communication plan. If it's in the memo, is there more groups that you're hearing from? Because there's a spot for it that just says, have you reached out and who have you reached out to say that it's on the agenda?
Do you want to comment on?
Is there a-
Special event permits?
Yeah, I would probably just include who's ever pulled a special event permit. The other thing is, and, you know, different conversations come to light of being a new clerk here and not knowing what events go on in the village. I didn't even know the men's barbecue existed, and they don't come in for a formal permit. They come in and pull their timbers, but it's just grandfathered.
Because that was one that I.
Correct,
thought
and
of.
then people are like, well, it's not a street closure, so they don't need a special event. And so, I need definition for my office to say, I really think no matter what event is going on, even if we're not deciding to charge people, however that decision goes, I would like them to fill out the paperwork. It just makes it much clearer and for anybody following in my footsteps that this is the process. So that's where I will say a lot of pieces have fallen.
Yeah, because there are
I
requests
just
that go
don't
to
know.
other departments for every
Right.
event.
Yeah.
Even if they don't close the street, the police still need to know what's going on, just because there'll be different levels of activity,
Yeah.
picnic benches, DPW.
So as much information as that we can have, that staff needs in advance of drafting the policy or reworking it.
Right. So there is the old policy. We did start, kind of piecing together potential new policy. Do you want both? Do you want the old
This was
policy?
never adopted.
No.
The old
No.
So for that matter,
in the draft,
Um,
first group.
And I think parts of it, we struggled as staff with parts of it were very procedure-based, and parts of it were very policy-based, and we were trying to really separate what's procedure and what can be included in the application as guidelines for the applicant versus what is the village board's policy that they would like to adopt.
I would give, my suggestion is, if being fresh eyes, I mean, we weren't tied to that policy.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I would just give us your recommendation.
Right.
And let us go from there,
based on your experience,
right?
Right.
since you've been on, and how you see it coming together, I would find that more helpful than going back to the
perfect.
original.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
do you have a direct, like a policy and the form and then the
Yes.
draft ordinances and stuff?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you got all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
All right.
So Sarah won't be at the next meeting, because she doesn't do meetings with us in before an election, because she's otherwise engaged.
I try to sleep.
Yeah, so, the next time that this would have an opportunity to come back will be April 15th. So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's okay for her to reach out to these groups and let them know that on the 15th, it will be your first discussion. And that you'll provide advisement after that point in terms of what type of process will be used or how that will go.
And most likely, we're not gonna have an hour and a half to work on it.
So you're
So,
gonna notify every single person that pulls a permit for a special.
Well, that's why I'm checking in, that's why, because this is the part that I'm concerned about, because it's definitely people voice concern about not being engaged in the process before.
That amount is smaller than like reaching out to all the businesses. So that part, I just want to make sure, like, are we reaching out to all the businesses or all the businesses?
It's just a bid and okay, we only have 3 that close down the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the soccer.
So we don't have people pull special events when they do stuff in the park.
No,
So men's club, nothing.
nothing. But
Surprised me.
I may
Yeah, we
need,
should.
I may need that information of people who have events. They do pull a
Right, no,
temporary.
and this is the question I
Yeah.
asked tonight.
Well, that's what,
I
they
was
pull a
like-
temporary Class B, but there's not an event packet because there's not a street closure, and that's where it's very hazy. Especially like as new staff had come in, we were like, so they don't have an event, should we?
That is confusing.
We were very confused, and I would just like I don't care, just a process, yeah.
Yeah, could I guess one step I think that would be helpful to do, and you can do it offline like before the meeting, is just kind of like go back historically, kind of, it sounds like that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to meet and just share historical, recollections of parks and all that stuff. Not that it would be the be-all, end-all, and exhaustive list, but it would kind of like, well, we could do that too. We could do that too. However you want to use the time. But I think we have to cover that, and then we have to, I think it would make sense to sort of collaborate with the bid and see what their ideas are about seeking input, what makes sense, So it's like kind of a, I don't think it, like a cattle call meeting would be
Oh, gosh.
like the best,
Not
just to
either.
facilitate. And so there may be a way to use just natural networks that are in place to
Okay.
seek input, and also to let people know, part of the communication plan could be, the committee's gonna address it on these dates. You don't have to be present if you have a comment or a question. It can be submitted in writing, so that we just, again, we're not gonna have, to your point, we're not gonna have an hour and a half to.
yeah, I was gonna say, if the bid director understands that we're doing this, then it's up on her to communicate.
So I'll show you this email that Jim was sent
Maybe
as
that's
the
the
bid
best.
director. It was
Yeah.
just Jim, I notified that this was on the agenda, and he said no. And so then, when he did, he got that comment.
Right.
But the thing is that like, the Men's Club, that's all process, like, that's not taking anything away from them, it's saying, oh, you might have to apply for a permit,
Right.
an application.
Correct.
The only thing that was controversial, again, was your
Monitoring
street
street
closed, because that affects events we already have in the street,
Yep.
and that are traditions, and so, if, in all honesty, those are the people that, you know, the bid can reach out to, those businesses, there's probably 3. Other than that, it's just more process oriented, it's like applying for I mean, there's no other part of that policy that's that controversial.
But there would be, then, even just for that part of it, it would be the communication to those groups.
Yeah.
And I still think doing it while it's in process gives, if for any reason the men's club fears that there's a perception that something will change and somehow their event will be affected,
Right.
they might as well just come sooner and we can assure them not, or whatever, you know. I,
Do the schools pull permits?
I'm sorry.
Do the schools pull permits?
No.
well, there have been things in the past.
The
so
parade, the homecoming parade, is that they do a parade?
Okay,
They do a parade.
Yes, I think they pull a permit because it's a parade and they need,
It's a parade.
yes.
Like,
But we don't charge them, you know, but at least we know what's going on. So that those are pieces, the little things that I was like, oh, you just don't know what you don't know, and when there's nothing said.
The follow 500, 5,000, or whatever.
Right, which is a road race. And then, like, when the Alumni Association for a couple of years, they did a
I don't
big.
think they do that anymore.
Right,
But
but
you're
they
right.
did, and so it's not